restart, and hopefully it'll fix itself. Hopefully you can hear me as well, which is important, I suppose. Okay, sweet. Let's get going. All right, so simplify these fractions. I am looking at what can divide into the numerator and denominator for each, as long as the same number so a common factor to both. That means I can simplify it. So I am thinking I can divide top and bottom of this fraction by 5, dividing top and bottom by 5. 15 divided by 5 is 3. 25 divided by 5 is 5. So 3/5 is that one. I can't go any further because I noticed that they're both prime numbers and they don't have any other factors bar itself and 1. This one you could have done in stages. If you want to do it in one big jump, you can divide by 12 if you saw that the highest common factor of both is 12. And that is 2 over 3 if you did one big jump. You also could have done it in stages. So perhaps divide by 2 first. And you get 12 over 18. And then hopefully you would notice, oh, I can divide by 2 again, because they're both even numbers. So I get 6 over 9. And then, oh, I can divide by 3. Okay. And that gives me 6 divided by 3 is 2. Oh, look, I got the same answer. So that's kind of cool. And if you think about it, 2 times 2 times 3 is 12. So you can see the link there between factors and highest common factor. It's just a combination. So these are the prime factors. All right. So either method is fine. And the last question, there only is a factor of 2 for both of these. So you get 1 over 9 for the first question. There's 3 marks for this question, 1 mark for each. You got to fully simplify those. So if this one you just left it at 6 over 9, you wouldn't get a mark, I'm afraid. So remember that in the actual test. Question 2. Convert these fractions. So if it's this is at the moment it's improper and I want to get it to mixed. This one is mixed and I'm going to get it to improper. All right, so 15 over 4. So I'm thinking, how many times does 4 fit into 15? Well, 4 fits into 15 3 times, I think, because 3 times 4 is 12. What's my remainder? So the remainder, 12, well, there's 3 left over. So that'll be still 3/4 left behind. And this is my answer. Second one, I have 4 wholes and 4 fifths. So I need to just get this into fifths. So I need to think about how many fifths are in 4. Well, 1 whole is 5/5. If you think about it, 2 wholes is 10/5. 3 would be 15/5, and 4 whole number is 20/5. So it's 20/5. Now there's a quicker way of doing that, of course. You just can multiply 4 times 5, because you know each one of these wholes has 5/5. 4 times 5 is 20, plus the 4 that's already here. Still over fifths. It's always going to be in fifths. So 24 over 5 is my final answer. So notice the way, if I do a lot of working, I put a box around my answer, just to make sure I know and you know what the answer is. I might do it up here as well, because I did a lot of working there. So 24/5. If you notice, both these, the denominator is the same at the start of the question and the end of the question, 5 and 5. So you don't need to change the denominator. It's always in the same one. All right, next question. So some decimals. There won't be that much decimals in this exam, but anything with decimals, we need to start thinking about lining up our decimal places if it's adding or subtracting. So we've 3.664. Line up the decimal places. 2 plus, it's 2.34, not plus 34. So I've lined up the decimal place underneath each other. I fill in the extra space with a 0. So you can always do that. And then I can just add in straight lines down. 4 plus 0 is 4. 6 plus 4 is 10, so 0 and carry the 1. 6 plus 3 is 9. Plus 1 is 10 and carry the 1. And I got 6 here as well. 3 plus 2 plus the 1 carried is 6004.004. Now, of course, the question asks, round the answer to the nearest whole number. So the nearest whole number is the nearest unit. So what's the nearest unit to 6.004? Well, that's 0. That's 0. That 0 is well below 5, so it wouldn't round up. It'll just be 6. And that is my final answer. Now, there's 3 marks going for that. If you added correctly, you'd probably get 2 of the marks. And if you rounded it correctly as well, you would get all 3 of the marks. The previous question, there's 4 marks.
Excuse me?
For each. Yes, Rennie?
Oh, sorry, I didn't quite hear. Did you say we'll get 3 marks if we didn't round it?
No.
Or 2 marks if we didn't round it, sorry?
Marks if you didn't round it. So 2 out of
How many marks did we get?
this, 2 out of 3, 3 out of 3 if you round it as well. So remember, the question will probably ask you to round it to the nearest whole number or 1 decimal place or something. So working it out was 2 marks, and then the extra mark was to round it. Next question.
Okay.
All right, next question. All right, so each one of these fractions must be equivalent to this first fraction, 1/4. So with any equivalent fractions, the jumps or the multiplying or dividing must be by the same number to numerator and denominator. So if I could see that the bottom here has been multiplied by 2 to get from 4 to 8. So that means the top has been multiplied by 2. 1 times 2 is 2. Now, I can always revert back to this first fraction. I can use this one if I want as well, because I know that 2 times 2 gives 4, so that's a whole number. So 8 times 2 gives 16. Now, there's a problem here with the next one. 16 times, well, it's a decimal, will give nothing. 16 times 2 is 32. Nothing, 16 times nothing gives 40. So this might be a little bit of an issue. But I can always refer back to the first fraction. That's also the same as 1/4 if you think about it. If they're all, and it's easy to do the conversion from a quarter because 40 is just 10 times bigger. So that means this one on top has to be 10 times bigger. 1 times 10 is 10. So my 3 answers there: 2, 16, 10. 2 right, I get 2 out of 4. 1 right, 1 out of 4. And none right, 0 out of 4 for that one.
Excuse me? Do you get 1 mark less if you didn't show your working for this, or not?
No, it didn't ask you to show your working. So for specific questions that say show your working, you would lose marks if you didn't. This one didn't ask for it because you can do it in your head.
Okay.
So on to the next page. Okay, so sometimes it's going to be blurry and not. Hopefully, when you rewatch the video, it'll be clear. All right, so convert these fractions to percentages. I'm going to do the first one without the calculator, and the second one with the calculator. You can use a calculator for both. All right, so convert each of these fractions to percentages. So 3 over 5, well, I'm going to use equivalent fractions here. I know that 3 over 5 can be written as, multiply by 2, 6 over 10. Okay, 6 over 10 can be written as 60 out of 100. And then, of course, a percentage is out of 100. So I have it, 60 out of 100. So that's 60%. Second one is not so easy. Because of the fact that this is a fraction that doesn't easily get to 100 as the denominator, I probably have to use the calculator. How do I use the calculator? Well, I do 7, the numerator, divided by 17, the denominator. And that will change it to a decimal for me. So I've got my fancy calculator here. 7 divided by 17, whoops, 17. And I get 0.0411176. Oh, loads of decimal places. Now I need to get that decimal to a percentage, so I'd always multiply by 100 to get a decimal to a percentage. I know multiply by 100, I can just move this decimal place 2 jumps. So it's going to be 41.176 and so on. Now, any rounding of that, I will accept. So if you rounded it to 41%, that's okay. If you kept it as this, that's okay. If you rounded it to 41.2%, that's okay. If you got 41.3 and no calculator, that's great, Charlie. Yeah, go for that. I'll give you that one. That was difficult. Any of these, so anything 41%ish is okay. I probably should have said rounded to the nearest whole number, but I forgot. Okay, so there's 2 marks going for each of those. Next one. Complete the following conversion table. All right, well, let's go from decimals to fractions first. So I have 0.2, which is 0.2. So that's 2/10. So that can be just written 2/10. But I gotta simplify that if I can, and I'll come back to that in a second. 0.9 is 9/10. Okay. So if there's 1 spot after the decimal, that's just tenths. If there's 2 spots instead of 100, 3 spots after the decimal instead of 1,000. I'm going to simplify this one. 2 divided, not 2 divided by 10. Well, it is, but I just need to simplify. Dividing both by 2, I get 1/5. So that's my answer here. 1/5. Okay, so I've done that one. Let's get this fraction to a decimal. So fraction to a decimal, well, I should know this one almost straight away, but if I'm not sure, I can just always divide numerator by denominator. 6 divided by 10 on your calculator, which of course is 0.6. So if I want, I can just do 6 divided by 10, but we should know that one straight away. All right, these 3 to percentages should be easy. How to get from a decimal to percentage? Well, we just did it. It's always multiplying by 100. So if I multiply each of these by 100, I get 60%, I get 20%, and I get 90%. Now with the last one, percentage back to decimal, well, if we do the opposite operation, if you multiply by 100, go in one direction, working backwards, dividing by 100. 0.4.
Mr. Collins?
I see. Can I finish? And then I'll just answer.
Okay.
0.4 back to, that's 1 decimal place as well. So that's 4 out of 10 or 40/100. Simplify that then to 2/5. Okay. So if you got everything right besides the simplification, you get 5 marks out of 6. But always simplify fractions. So if you got 2 out of 10, 4 out of 10, and the rest of it right, you get 5 marks out of 6. If you simplified everything, you get 6 marks out of 6. There's make some mistakes. Maybe you make 1 or 2 mistakes, you get 4 marks out of 6. If you make 3 or 4 mistakes, you probably get 2 marks out of 6. And if you got nothing right, you get 0 marks out of 6. So with simplification and fractions, it's always assumed in maths that you will simplify a fraction. It's always presumed. So always simplify fractions, and maybe we learn that for the actual test.
Mr. Collins.
Yes?
Sorry, I don't want to. So for question 5, I got 41.1. Is it okay? So, the answer was 41.2.
Yeah, that'd be okay.
Okay, that's okay. Thank you.
Okay. So this question's worth 12 marks. So all the operations of fractions, 2 marks for each. So if you get it right, you get 2 marks. If you don't get it right, you get 0 marks. So let's see. So with adding and subtraction, so this one, and this one, I'm going to need common denominators. So for these 3, A, B, and E, I'm going to need common denominators. For multiplying and dividing, I don't need common denominators. So let's start off with this one. Common denominators of 8 and 4. Well, the first one I'm thinking of is 8. So I have 3/8 plus, well, how do I get 1/4 to 8ths? Well, make equivalent fraction. So if I multiply by 2 top and bottom, I get 2 on top, and I get 8 on bottom. Okay, sweet. My denominators are the same. So if my denominators are the same, they can then be added. The denominator in the answer will be the same. 3 plus 2 is 5. So for adding and subtraction, common denominator and that same denominator is in the answer. Next one. 5 and 3, common denominator. Well, I can think of 15, so I'm going to use 15. So they're both going to be out of 15, and I know my answer is going to be out of 15. All right, so let's figure out what the numerator here is going to be. Well, 5 has been multiplied by 3 to get to 15, so the top, to make it an equivalent fraction, must also be multiplied by 3. The bottom here has been multiplied by 5, so the top here must be multiplied by 5. So I'm left with 2 times 5, which is 10. Now I can subtract because they are out of the same number, so I have 12 fifteenths, and I take away 10 of those fifteenths, and I'm left with 2 fifteenths. I'm going to do the last addition one before I do the multiplication and division, just to get used to these common denominators. There's 2 ways of doing this. You can just add the whole numbers separately and add the fractions separately, and that's what I'm going to do. So 2 plus 3 give me an answer of 5 for the whole numbers part, 2 plus 3. The other part, 1/4 plus 2/3, then is a little bit easier because I don't have these numbers attached. Now, it is perfectly okay to do improper fractions. So you would have 9/4 and 11/3, and then just do the normal way with that. But I think this way might be a little bit quicker. So I'm picking a common denominator of 12 here, because 4 times 3 is 12. I know they both go into 12. The bottom here is being multiplied by 3, so the top is also multiplied by 3. The bottom here is multiplied by 4, so the top must be multiplied by 4. Always thinking equivalent fractions. If I multiply the top and bottom by the same number, it is still the same fraction. All right, so I've got 3 and 8, which is 11/12. All right, 11/12. And I can put that with the whole number I already have, so I get 5 and 11/12. And that's my answer. All right, now I'm going to do some multiplication. Part C. Multiplication can be just done in straight lines. So all you need to do is 5 times 1, 5, and 6 times 3, 18. No more needed than just that. Go straight lines for multiplication. For part D, it's a division. So remember Kentucky Fried Chicken. Very important. Remember fried chicken when you're doing division and fractions. Keep the first one, 2/5. We're going to keep that one the same. Change the sign from division to multiplication and flip. So change the sign. I'm going to flip this fraction, the reciprocal, 7/2. Okay? And then because it's multiplication, I just go boom, straight lines. I can pre-simplify here if I want, but I might simplify after. 2 times 7 is 14. 5 times 2 is 10. Okay. Now I'm going to simplify because I see that that is simplifiable because it's an even number. Divide by 2 and 2. The equivalent fraction will be 7/5. I'll accept that as an answer, or I'll accept 1 2/5 if you want to put it into a mixed number. So if you didn't simplify here, you lose a mark. So you get 1 mark out of 2 for that. Last question, which is the trickiest question. So with division and multiplication, I can't use this kind of method because these two, when we're multiplying or dividing, the operation doesn't work as simply as just adding the whole numbers or multiplying the whole numbers. So Ethan, if you got 1 4/10, that's not simplified, so that's one mark out of 2 for that one. So they're all worth 2 marks, so you add up your total.
I have a question, Mr. Collins. If you wait, so did you get what did you get for a D? If it wasn't 1 4/10?
1 2/5.
But how? Like you have to simplify the mixed number?
Well, 4/10 can be simplified down to 2/5, can't it?
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I just simplified the little bit of fraction. Okay. Let's get to this last one. First, I'm going to convert these to improper. So we did that in question 2, I think. 5 times 3 is 15, plus the 1 is 16/3, divided by 2 times 6 is 12, plus the 5 is 17/6. Yeah, if you don't simplify, it's on 1 mark out of 2, yeah? So remember to simplify. I think this one even said it in the question. Simplify all answers. All right. So we have improper fractions. Now we can divide, and we divide by doing our Kentucky Fried Chicken. 16/3 multiplied instead of divide by its reciprocal. And then you can work this out. So this is a little bit of a tricky fraction, but that's okay. 3 times 17. This is where you would be allowed to use the calculator. And this 3 times 17 is 51. You can use that if you want. 6 times 16, well, 6 times 10 would be 60. 6 times 6 is 36. Add those together, you get 96. You can leave it at that, or you can say that 51 goes into 96 once, with a remainder, I think, of 45 over 51. All right, so the last one was the trickiest one, definitely there. Either of these two.
You could divide it by 3, right?
Oh, can you? Let me
Yeah.
see. Oh, yes, you can, of course, because they're both addition. I would have lost the mark. Thank you, Asher. 1 and 3 into that goes 15, and 3 into that, you're damn right. Yes. 1 and 15 17ths. Oh, so we might have lost some marks. That's why it's so tricky. I would
Wait,
have lost.
are we allowed to do 32 17ths?
Yes.
Okay.
Or 32.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
I still got 96 for film, but I didn't simplify. Would that count as like 1 mark?
Yeah.
Mr. Collins, so for the time thing, are you allowed to simplify the denominator, the first fraction of the denominator 3 is, and 6 in the numerator?
For the timesing, say that again.
Yeah, for the number f, for the first fraction, you're allowed to simplify the 3 and the 6.
Oh, yeah, pre-simplifying is definitely a good idea. So the 3 goes into that once and 3 goes into that twice. So that's called a pre-simplify. And then 16 times 2 would give 32, and 1 times 17 gives 17. Yes, so you can always pre-simplify before you multiply. I didn't hear who was that.
It was Brianna.
Oh, yeah. Okay, well done, Brianna. Okay, yeah, so pre-simplifying is fine.
Be 1 mark, you got 1 in 45, 51.
Yes, 1 mark.
Okay.
There's a total of 12 there. You can figure out what you've got. All right, so we're on to the last page now. All right, finding 20% of $25. Well, as I said, for percentages, you're allowed to use a calculator as long as you say what you've typed into the calculator. That's okay. So if you use the calculator, you can always just do the amount, $25, multiplied by the decimal. So multiplied by the decimal of 20% is 0.2, 0.20. And if you want, you can just type that into the calculator. If you're not sure, well, you can always convert this to a fraction. So 20% is 1/5. And 1/5 of 25, well, to get a fraction of an amount, just divide by 5 to get 1/5 of something, and that'd be 5. Or you could do it this way, and that'd be 5. Either way is fine. So this way you could have done it without a calculator, but if you wanted, you can always do it that way. Okay, increase 8,000 by 15%. So it's got to be more than 8,000. So we get 15%, and then we add it on. So once again, the amount, 8,000, multiplied by 0.15. When we type that into our calculator, okay, so what do I get? 1,200. 1,200. Now I haven't increased 8,000 by that yet. That's just the 15%. So I must add that on to 8,000 to get 9,200. That's my answer here. So you get 1 mark if you got 1,200, and you get 2 marks if you wrote 9,200. Okay, there is actually a quicker way of doing that. If you get your calculator and include the 8,000 by multiplying by 1. If you multiply by 1.15, which is actually 115%, you also get 9,200. But that's just a side note if you want to do that. Yeah, you probably won't get any marks if you don't show your working. So if you just write an answer in the test, you need to show, if you type something into the calculator, I need to know what you typed in. Otherwise, you could have just peeked over someone's shoulder and got the answer. So for 8, 9, and 10, yeah, you will have to show workings, yeah. Give yourself the right marks for today. Give yourself full marks, but just remember for the exam, always show your working. If you type anything into a calculator in the maths exam, any maths exam for your entire secondary school, you would have to say what you typed into the calculator. So just writing an answer won't be any good. Okay. Okay. So, so you can give yourself full marks here, but always show workings. Otherwise, I know it didn't say. Maybe I'll put in all the actual tests to show your workings. But anything you put onto calculator, you should never just write an answer. So give yourself full marks for today. But if you type anything into a calculator, always write down. That's okay. We'll learn. We'll get it next time. Okay. So 3/4 of 320. So 320 is split up into quarters. And I want to find 3 of those quarters. How do I find one of those quarters? 1/4 of 320 was 320 divided by 4, split it into 4, and that's 80. Once I know what 1/4 is, I can multiply by any number, and I can find out 2/4, well, that'll be half, but 2/4 or 3/4. So if I multiply by 3, I'll get 3/4 then. So 80 multiplied by 3 is $240. Okay. So what you could have, you could have worked off a half and then added a quarter, whatever way you wanted to do that. $240, as long as you showed some working something, you would get it. Okay, last 2 questions. A lot of people read this question wrong. All right. So 7 3/4 kilograms of prawns. Okay, so 7 3/4. Notice the way I'm highlighting the numbers here. Prawns, and 3/5 of them were eaten. How many kilograms were left over? 3/5 of them were eaten. So when I look at a problem like this, I try and think in my head, what's an answer that I think it should be around. So if it's 7 3/4 kilograms, that's about 8 kilograms, and 3/5 of them, so that's over half, were eaten. So that means less than half is left. So I reckon around 3 kilograms or so should be my answer. In around that. That's only a guess. But I've guessed and I've thought about the problem. So therefore, if I get an answer like 7 kilograms, that means I've probably made a mistake. So I want to get 3/5 of this. Or I could get 2/5 of that, because that's what's left over. So I've 7 3/4, and I want to get, well, I actually want to get 2/5, not 3/5. 2/5 of 7 3/4. Okay, so that's what it boils down to, this question. Now, I could have got 3/5 and then worked off that and subtracted, but I think it's easier just to get 2/5 of that. All right. Of in maths, when you see of, it's multiply. For instance, if I want to get 3/4 of 16, I would multiply 3/4 by 16. And I put 16 over 1. And that would give me, well, multiplying by 3 and dividing by 4. You can try this on your calculator. So if I divide up 16 by 4, I get 4 and multiply, so that's 12. That makes sense. 3/4 of 16 is 12. Okay, so if I want to get 2/5 of 7 3/4, I got to multiply. So 2/5 of, I'm going to change this to improper. 7 times 4 is 28. Add the 3 is 31. Okay, and by multiplying this, I'll have my answer. 2 times 31, well, I can actually pre-simplify here if I want. 2 into 4 goes, so that's a pre-simplification. So that makes my job way easier. So instead of multiplying by 2 and dividing by 2, I can just pre-simplify. You don't have to, you can simplify afterwards. 1 times 31 is 31. 2 times 5 is 10. So I have 31 over 10, which as a mixed number is 3 1/10. Now, does that make sense to me? Yes, it does. Because as I said at the start, my guess was around 3 kilograms. I put kg after that. You won't lose a mark if you didn't, but you probably should put kilograms.
What if you do it as a decimal, like 3.1?
3.1 is okay. Yeah, 3.1 is okay. But I prefer, if it's a fractions question, give your answer in fractions. Okay, so remember that for next time. But 3.1 is okay. Yeah. So that is how you did that one. That was a tricky one. 3.7 is not right, Charlie, I'm afraid. All right. That's okay, Charlie. Still not right. It's not close enough. Okay. So Osborne, you got 7, probably because you just subtracted 3/5 away from 7 subtracting. So it's 3/5 of them are eaten, not 3/5 of a kilogram was eaten. It's 3/5 of this was eaten, not 3/5 of a kilogram. So it's a difference. So that's why it's important to read the question and then come up with an answer you think would make sense before you start. All right. All right. So we have this election here. We have 3 candidates, Anne, Bob, and Charlie. They received 3 votes. So if 90% of the school population voted, what's the total number? Okay, so how many votes came in? 227, 128, 182, and 239. Okay, so that was the number of votes that come in. And I think, well, you can do this on your calculator, but I think it's about 648, is it? 227. 648. So that's the votes. All right. Now let's read if 90% voted. So that is 90% of the school. What's the total number of students in the school? Well, the total number of students is 100%, all the students. So if I have 90%, I want to find 100%. So I have 90 of something, and I want to find 100 of it. It's probably easier to go back to find 1%. 648 divided by 90 will give 1%. And then I can just multiply by 100 to get 100%. So 648 divided by 90. So 1% is 7.2. And multiplying by 100 will give me 100%. 7.2, that's 720. That's it. 720 students. So if you get some sort of answer that's dealing with people and you get a decimal in it, like 0.8 or something, that strikes me as ridiculous, the answer. And 713, a lot of people were getting yesterday as we went through the test. That's because you presumed that this was 100% and you got 10% of that. If you think about it,
Mr. Collins?
10% of 90%, 1 second, 10% of 90%, if you want to think about it, 10% of 90% is actually 9%. So that's a bit, I wouldn't have done that. Yeah, so you could have divided by 9 and then multiplied by 10, you would have got it. So there's 3 marks going for both those questions. Unless you got it fully right, you might have got 1 mark if you did something right. If you started by dividing by 90 or something, you might have got 1 mark. But there's going to be pretty ruthless on question 11 and 12. Unless you, so for instance, if you got an answer 7 up here, 7 by subtracting, no marks. And if you got an answer, anything other than, if you got your 713 answer, no marks, I'm afraid. Okay, so you can add up how many marks it's out of. I haven't, it's around 40 something or 50. And it would be the same for the actual exam. So you can add up how much you did. Okay. Any questions?
Well, can I ask a question
Yes.
about number 1? Question number 1. So on question number 1 for B, if you didn't simplify it, you still get a mark?
Question 1B, 1 second.
Excuse me.
1 second.